Hey everyone, welcome to session 3 of the Scite Summer Bootcamp Advanced AI Strategy for Researchers. I can't believe it, but we're actually already at the halfway point of our bootcamp journey. And as you can see here, today we're diving deep behind the scenes of how AI works for research, particularly focusing on the technical aspects that make Scite Assistant different from other AI tools you might be using. After today, you can see kind of like the split session for divided by for A and for B. Of course, you can attend both if you'd like to. The idea is here that depending on what your focus is, so if you're in academia, I would recommend you attend for A. And then if you're more in corporate R&D, then I'd recommend you attend for B. But as I mentioned, of course, you can attend both sessions if that sounds interesting to you. Okay, so before we dive into today's content, let me do a quick recap of what we covered in session 2 on effective prompting techniques. And if you weren't able to make it live, then my colleague Alejandro in the chat here in just a moment, he'll be sending out the link with all the recordings just in case you missed it. So we talked about common mistakes to avoid, like treating large language models like traditional search tools, being too vague, asking multiple things in one prompt. And then on the flip side, we covered the essential elements of a good prompt, such as providing context and purpose, being specific about what information you need, setting parameters and constraints like timeframes and study types, and also the importance of iterating and refining your prompts as you go. And these fundamentals will actually be kind of important for understanding today's session because we're going to see how Scite Assistant uses many of these principles behind the scenes. Okay, so similar as the other sessions, we have a raffle prize today as well. So we're giving away one raffle to one attendee who stays for the full session, and I'll let that person know directly via email. So you can see there, it's coming from my email address. And today's prize, as you can see here already, is a JBL Go portable waterproof speaker, which really the idea is this is perfect for summer activities or just enjoying some music while you work or while your kids are playing in the pool and you're working. Okay, so let's look at what we have planned for today. As I mentioned, this is going to be our most technical session, but don't worry, our speaker, who I'll be introducing in just a moment here, is going to walk us through everything in a way that's accessible, whether you're a technical expert or really just curious about how these systems work. So let's look at the agenda here. As you can see, in just a second, I'll be introducing our speaker that you can see on here already. Then we'll dive into principles of factual assistance, which is the foundation of how systems like Scite Assistant are built to be more reliable than more general AI tools. Then we'll cover everything from retrieval augmented generation to source evaluation methodologies and ranking systems. And then already as the other sessions, you know that we have practical application. Today you'll have time to try out table mode, and then we'll wrap up with live Q&A. So also down on Zoom where it says Q&A, feel free to add your questions. And you also have the option to upvote, which will make it easier for us to know which questions that we should answer first. Okay, last couple of sentences here from me. I'm joined today by Dom Rosati, who is the head of AI at Scite. And Dom, I'll just let you introduce yourself and then you can directly kick things off here.
Hi, thanks, Julia. So yes, I'm head of AI at Scite. I'm also a PhD student at Dalhousie University, where I mostly study AI safety and security. So I'm very deep in this world of AI related things and have been at Scite since the beginning. So everything I'm going to tell you, I built pretty much myself. So I know it very deeply, and we are, like Julia said, going to go over things in an accessible, intuitive manner, but some of these things you might not have heard, or you might have heard vaguely, like RAG or agents or things like this. So I'll just make sure that it's clear. And again, the purpose of today is really anything you've seen in Scite Assistant to go over like what it looks like under the hood. Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to get started here. So, first, I think that when you look at scientific AI assistance or assisted scientific workflows with AI, there's sort of this core component, and it's natural language generation. And so systems like ChatGPT or Anthropic's Claude, and these kinds of large language models, they really empower this natural language generation capability where you can ask the model for something and it generates text. Now, the problem though with just natural language generation and large language models in general is they're just memorization agents. So even though they produce fluent text, they are simply just memorizing vast quantities of text found on the internet or more recently produced by experts like PhD students and technical experts and are annotated and then trained on by OpenAI and so on. So in order to sort of understand the capabilities of these memorization agents who have syntactical capabilities, meaning they can produce fluent text over memorized corpuses, we have to understand this concept of retrieval augmented generation. So without retrieval augmented generation, we're just sort of relying on the memorization capabilities of these models. And because they are generating words using probabilistic techniques or memorizing those words using probabilistic techniques, there's no guarantees that they'll be able to produce factual answers. And this is in fact true for any model that's produced, even if it was GPT 100 or 1,000. They'll always produce factual errors. Just it's a necessary outcome of sampling text in a probabilistic manner. So one way to control for that is to ground generation in retrieved documents. And for scientific text, these retrieved documents are the kinds of things you're used to using in your literature tools. And these could be things like JSTOR or EBSCO or Google Scholar or Semantic Scholar or Archive or any kinds of these tools. And so one of the unique things that Scite does when we have a corpus of text is uniquely amongst all the AI assistants using science, we have indexing agreements with academic publishers. And that allows us to access both open access sources, which your common sort of retrieval augmented generations get access to. So ChatGPT would get access to this through the internet or Elicit or Perplexity, these kinds of things. But we also very uniquely have access to retrieving closed access sources. So we use closed access sources, unlike other tools. Now, I'll go into a little bit about the mechanics of retrieval augmented generation. So when you have some sort of task, like how does the structure of a protein affect its function? Well, in order to, again, hedge for this fabricated information thing that's guaranteed with any use of large language models, we need to retrieve references. Okay, so what we do is, again, unlike other tools, we treat this as very much a traditional information retrieval task, meaning we're just you doing keyword search over over these closed access and open access sources. And these are scholarly sources and so on. So you can see here's like a reference, the title, a bunch of metadata, for instance, like the publication type, like it might be a review. So in biomedical studies, this is important. For instance, you might have practice guidelines or things of this nature, topics, abstract, and so on. So we also have things from the full text itself. So again, this is a unique advantage that Scite has, where we retrieve context from full text. And we're doing this using traditional keyword search based tools rather than some sort of vector search. And the reason why is because there isn't a clear advantage to using those kinds of sophisticated tools when it comes to scientific literature retrieval. In fact, when you're retrieving amongst a corpus of over 200 million full texts, well, you have problems when you vectorize them and so on. So we just use traditional uh, information retrieval techniques like BM25, TF-IDF, and these kinds of things. Now, I will talk about a more sophisticated thing we do after that, which is ranking. And that will also allow me to uniquely talk about the bibliometric capabilities that Scite sort of builds on to determine whether documents are of high quality. Um, like I said, there are problems with factual natural language generation without RAG, but there are huge problems with factual natural language generation with RAG. So RAG, I mean, it's kind of a well-known fact that RAG systems now use irrelevant or inappropriate sources that don't support claims. Um, these here we go. Yeah. Oops. Just trying to get my and these systems generally, don't have good guidance on how to select high quality resources. So even though they are grounding text in citations, like so citations often are inappropriate, or they're not relevant, or in the case of many of these systems, the citations can be fabricated themselves. So we sort of use two big approaches, again, to correct for that. One is called self-criticism, where models are generally able to fact check their own answers and provide revisions. Again, this relies on sort of a downstream LLM-based approach to being able to determine whether a claim is correct, and some smaller models that are not natural language generation based on whether or not a fact is verified. But also we use something unique to Scite, again, is this credibility analysis. And this I'll explain a little bit later when I talk about ranking, because you'll have to understand the Scite knowledge graph and supporting and contrasting citations to understand how we do this credibility analysis and quality assurance. I said this a few times, but maybe it's good to go over like what are some of the differences. So with these tools, so GPT-5 now, I suppose, OpenAI or Anthropic, or Cohere, these large language model providers, while they can provide now text experiences over open web sources, and their strengths again are having this like very advanced rubber duck that you can do draft writing with or get explanations for and so on. Like, even though they are retrieving sources from the web, fact verification is not guaranteed. This is like modulated a little bit now that we have like reasoning style approaches where the model sort of, if you've used O3 or if you've used since yesterday GPT-5, where these models sort of like consider their answer and they use like a reasoning path to determine whether it's the correct answer. Again, there's no like fact verification guarantee there. I should also mention like other agentic tools that are like agent native, like Manus Manus, sorry, and some of these other ones. They're just like basically the same thing as this, except they have like a wider repertoire of tools. Now that matters when you're doing sort of tasks like that involve coding and these kinds of things, but that's outside of the scope of what Site Assistant does. A tool, I'll just group elicit and perplexity, and whatever else you can sort of think of in terms of tools that are AI assistants specifically marketed for science or academia. These tools like generally are okay, but again, like, and they do have some innovations for being able to do fact verification and so on. But generally, they're limited in their source quality because they don't have publisher agreements. They don't do indexing with publishers and these kinds of things. The other major difference, which will become clear in a minute, is they don't use bibliometrics to determine the quality of sources like we do. So I'm just going to show like an example of what the difference between those systems where you don't have access to closed sources. So that would be just RAG using Crossref. Crossref is just a data source of abstracts and titles for around 200 million documents, and Cite Assistant uses like the full text. So you can see that, well, we can just look at something like the correctness, where the correctness using which is defined as whether indeed like the answer is correct on these 20 questions from systematic reviews. RAG using Crossref alone is much less correct than Cite Assistant. So yeah, I mean that's just a summary of the slide. And I won't go over this, but just to say that like we validated this with human annotators and so on, and you really do want the full text in order to answer the questions from documents. And this makes sense, like although you could have high level sort of answers from abstracts, um, generally, detailed questions you want when you're doing scientific research tasks they're found in the full text itself and not in the abstract. So I'm going to go over inner workings of Cite Assistant here. Cite the Cite Assistant has always been an agentic tool from day one. It's not like in the last year we saw the emergence of agents as a paradigm for using generative AI, and we've shifted. We've always used an agent-based approach, and so the first step of an agent-based approach is once you've given the agent or the tool a query now or a task, now we have to decide what tools to use. Is that going to be like site search, or is it going to be tables or dashboards or reports, or none of the above, right? It might just be like a writing assistance task and so on. So we use a tool decision procedure. This is like, your academic AI assistant equivalent to reasoning, where we develop a search strategy. So the idea here is once you have, if you suppose it's a task that requires literature support, well, now you need the assistant to be able to go out, search on the web, or sorry, search in our database, the Scite literature database over full text and so on for uh, getting the most relevant information. And so we formulate a search strategy and a search plan, and then we execute that search plan. So basically, this is maybe more the old user interface. We have a slightly different user interface here, which we'll see in a second with the demo, and you've seen before if you've joined these webinars. But this is just to show from our old interface like what generating a search strategy looks like, and you'll get a search strategy, but you're also able to edit these searches and formulate your own search strategy for Scite Assistant to use. So that's another opportunity for customization. Ranking and credibility analysis is unique to Scite Assistant. So one of the things we do in order to achieve state-of-the-art relevancy just on content alone is use something called a cross encoder. It just allows us to score retrieved documents using a traditional information retrieval tool with like a high-powered semantic similarity model for re-ranking documents that we've retrieved. And that allows us to have like a high relevancy score, but there's a bunch of factors that are important for determining the quality of a document. So recency and citation count are sort of these like traditional bibliometric indicators that are used for understanding the quality of a document, but they're sort of not necessarily always correct and so on. And so we have uniquely something called supporting and contrasting citations. And these are citations to documents that determine whether that document has been independently verified and supported by another paper, or whether there's some criticism or failure to replicate the study and so on. And these are contrasting citations. So we generally rank documents or assess their quality based on supporting and contrasting citations. And you can you can customize the reference ranking as you like. So it might be something where you only care about recency, or you only care about relevance or number of citations, and that's fine. So just again, this is just an example of like the ranking procedure. So it is like the kind of agentic or reasoning trace you get in these large language model providers, but this is unique to a workflow for scientific tasks that require scientific literature support. So we have, again, now we come back full circle to retrieval augmented generation. And we support a variety of models. Actually, this morning we were just talking about our plan for supporting GPT-5, so that will be coming in a moment. And again, we can support other models as customers ask us to, and things like this. But these are most of the models that customers have asked us to. And of course, the O3 model and so on, like provide reasoning support, where in addition to this reasoning and agentic approach for doing scientific tasks that require literature support that I just showed, there's also kind of the ability to combine that with leveraging native reasoning support from GPT-4 O3 Mini. And by the way, like it's not really reasoning, it's just sort of a fancy term for generating, let's say, 30 or 40 different responses and filtering them for the best response. Now, that's kind of a generalization because we have things like chain of thought and so on where that happens through time. But you can just think of it as now we're spending a lot of money, or OpenAI is spending a lot of money on generating thousands of potential answer candidates and selecting the best, which of course makes sense of why reasoning improves things. Okay, so this is just an example of the retrieval augmented generation approach. Um, this is kind of relatively new to a site where we potentially now have two response formats. We have like a natural language or summary kind of format, and we have like a table mode where you can do structured review and data extraction, things like this. So I'll demo that in a second, and as we continue, but I do want to get back on fact checking responses. So again, like I said, for natural language generation, there's never going to be an LLM or LLM powered tool that doesn't fabricate information. This is just a fact of how these systems work. And so fact checking becomes super important. Again, I explained the problems with retrieval augmented generation. Just to summarize, how do you know you're retrieving the right documents? How do you know you're using them appropriately? Things like this. So fact checking becomes super important in these systems in order to mitigate as best we can. Again, you can never fully mitigate issues with information quality in LLMs because, of course, they're not thinking, they're just memorization agents. So this is just a contrived example of our self criticism approach. But like I said, self criticism isn't enough because now you're relying on an LLM just to do all of the same things, retrieve things to check the claims and so on, and you generally can't do that. So we have like a whole suite of fact verification, other fact verification approaches that don't necessarily rely on LLMs, including things like leveraging that knowledge graph of supporting and contrasting citations, where uniquely in Scite we can go and look at a contrasting citation and go, this paper was failed to be replicated or has some sort of criticism and things like that. And then we will fold that again back into the response. And during fact checking, you might notice that like the answer changes. And this is because, now that we have had criticism of these documents and so on, or support, right? We have independent support. We might add a citation and things like this. So yeah, again, that was just solutions to problems with retrieval augmented generation that are just going to be, again, there's problems in the nature of using LLMs and there's problems in the nature of using RAG. So because of all of this, we really focus on providing an experience of transparency and auditing. So like what searches were run, which publications were consulted, which ones were used, what part of each publication was used, and provide an experience for you to do your own fact checking because it's an absolute must that you do that. So whenever you have large language generated text, you must check with the grounded document whether or not that is indeed correct. This is a step that can never be skipped, no matter what kind of natural language generation technology we develop in the future. So we try to make that approach as easy as possible for you to be able to check, okay, uh, this claim is indeed supported in this document and these kinds of things. So what we're going to do now is we'll take 10 minutes about for participants in the webinar to use Scite Assistant in the table format. I'll kind of go along with this as well. So let's see if I try to copy from the, yeah, I thought that was going to happen. Maybe I can copy from the slide like this. Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna go through this, and you can either follow along with these instructions, follow along with me, or you can go to Assistant, switch to table mode, and try to do some other topic of interest to yourself. So I'm gonna go
And
to, yeah.
sorry, Dom, for interrupting. I'll copy and paste the instructions in the chat, everyone, just
Yeah,
because
thank you for
Dom is
doing.
going along, so you can actually look at that as well. You should all have access to Scite. If you don't, if you have any technical issues, let us know in the chat or reach out to our customer support team. And then, yeah, let us know if anything comes up. Thanks, Dom.
Yeah. Yeah, no worries. Okay, so let's see here. Okay. I almost typed in something else. Okay, so I'm gonna go to sites. I mean, I'll just sort of go through the full thing. So you go to site and you'll have to log in, and of course, like you'll have your bootcamp login that you've done and so on that allows you to have access. I'm just logging in with my test account. And so you go over to Assistant, and today we're going to be using tables mode. So I just have to double check if I actually have if I set my text. Yeah, okay. I set my testing account to allow me to do this. Sometimes I change it to be for users and so on just to check. So now we're going to take our question. What are the side effects of SGLT2 inhibitors? And then, those are just some examples I'll show you in a second. We put it into the tables and we press go. And now we have basically now you should be able to understand kind of all of these different uh, steps that our agent is taking in order to answer your question. Okay, so now we sort of have retrieved our 25 results, which the number of results can be customized in the setting here. So you can add more or less results if you want, or you can upload papers of your own. So, I could have done that through a dashboard, which is a collection of paper or individual papers. There's all kinds of settings that you can use, and that I think was covered in previous webinars, so I won't go over them. So we have like kind of a base table where our question from before, what are the side effects of SGL2 inhibitors, is now in this table, and we have these references, right? And we can go for all 25 references, have a look. At what the answers were, and this is just our basic response. Okay, so that's fine. Now we can add things to the table. So let's see what the instructions were. So now we can add study design. Here we go. So that's going to be the name of the column, and we're going to add instructions. So what type of study design was used? Okay, let's go back. What type of study design was used? And then we have some response formatting options that we could potentially have, an answer length that we could potentially use. I'm not sure if there's anything specific. No, so I'll just use the default, which is, yeah, standard response, which is again generated text, and the answer length is short. You can also use it like a concise response. Suppose you wanted like a couple words, and that's fine as well. So I'll add that column. And now, again, the same things are happening that normally happen going out and this time, like we know the document of interest. So it's not like we're retrieving additional documents for this, but we're we might leverage some of the citations. So these are the supporting citations of this document. Let's see if there's any with contrasting citations. There might, yeah, here's one with a contrasting citation. So, you might see it might use like critical information. Actually, let me see if I can. And I could just show what that is. So if you want to know like the supporting citations and contrasting citations that helped us determine the quality of these things, you can just click the Scite badge and you can go over to the Scite report for the document and you can just like look for the contrasting citations. And see that like this paper had a result that was different from the findings of the original paper. So that's where that criticism was brought. And oh, just to complete it, like I can show you the supporting citations as well. So here's the supporting citations. Uh, and let's see if there's anything interesting. Yeah, just like consistent results found. So that's really all the supporting contrasting citations are. And now you can see going back to like our original task, the study design. So we can see the different study designs that were used for each of these. And let's go back. So now we can add another one, sample size. So we can do this. And we can add column here, sample size. And we can add this prompt here. Maybe I should copy from the chat. Oh, goodness, where did it go? Okay, here we go. Okay, and then now I can add another column and I can keep adding columns like this and keep adding keep having questions over the documents in my table.
This
Okay,
is
so
great.
that's
Dom,
fine.
one
Yeah.
question that came up, which I think makes perfect sense right now. Whenever people start in assistant, not in table mode, but in the summary mode, can you maybe
Mhm.
share quickly how they can switch to table mode or vice
Oh,
versa?
yeah. Yeah, so you can sort of let's see if I have any. Oh yeah, it's all brand new. That's right. Okay, so if you're in not this mode, let's just go back to our original one. So let's see. Okay. And now we're going to be in summary mode or um, dialogue mode or whatever. And we have the classic assistant stuff. Now, if you wanted to, for your next question, switch to where was it? Oh gosh, I've lost it. Oh, I must have lost it somewhere. Okay, I'll have to do that again then. Okay. Okay, so let's do this again. So it'll finish all the things. And then if you want to use it table mode, you can just click table mode and apply. And so now your next question you ask is going to be a table. And then you can also like switch that off and you can go back to like the natural language view and you can just consistently do that. So it's all controlled through the table mode switcher there. Does that answer the question?
I think so. Perfect. If there are any follow-up questions, then yeah, you can just let us know here in the chat or
Yeah.
in the Q&A. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Let's see if there was anything else. So I mean, I think for that particular um that particular table, we pretty much have everything that we want to show about tables for the exercise. You can like remove columns, you can edit them, you can do all kinds of things like that. You can also download the table, right? You can export this, and you can use that like on downstream. It's just a CSV file. So you can use that in downstream data analysis or whatever. So this can like accelerate your workflows over retrieving a set of documents and things like this. That's pretty much it. Oh, there is one more thing I wanted to show just as a preview. So probably early next week, we're also adding like this suggested columns mode just to make using tables easier. So these are just like standard um, things you might want to add given your table. So that's just suggested prompts.
Perfect.
So now, oh yeah, and yeah, this came from like customers asking us, particularly for having these suggested prompts. So, we are very responsive to whatever feedback you might have or things you might want us to add. There's also a poll, I think. Julia, maybe you can explain more about the poll. I'm not sure where
100%.
it is. It's maybe somewhere in here. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. So I'll pull up a poll right now. Just we'll give you another like minute or two here, just if in case it was too quick. So if you want to still play with it, and we just like to hear if you've gotten to see the summary mode before, and now you've played with the table mode. So basically, the question, the poll that you'll see here in just a second is, let me launch this. Yeah, just sharing your biggest difference that you've noticed between table mode and regular summary mode. And also feel free to add here if you have like any preference. So we'd just love to hear that. And one question that just came up about the suggested ones that I listed here. Oh, can we
Yeah.
also create and save our own columns in the suggested field? Is that something that's possible
Current,
or
so
would
in
be?
terms of like having ones where they would be custom to you as a user or you as an organization, not currently yet. So under this new scheme, like you'd have to add them every time, but that is really good feedback. We actually haven't heard that yet. So I'll bring that to the product team because that could be really interesting. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I actually see a handful of people suggesting something similar. So great.
Okay. Cool.
Always great to hear from everyone firsthand. Um, okay, let's wait just another second here and then we'll dive
Yeah.
into your questions. Just to remind everyone, you can upvote questions, and I see a few have already done that, which will just help us make sure that we answer the most relevant ones first.
So I'm just getting back to where we were.
Sure. And for
I'm
people
just
that have asked, we will be sending out the recording and we can also send out the slides. So
yeah.
just let us know and we'd be happy to do that.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll wait on people to finish the poll first, and then we can go to
Yeah,
questions.
perfect. Got a good amount of responses already. Okay, I think I'll just leave the poll open. So feel free to add your feedback here as you go, and we can get started on some of the questions.
Okay.
Okay, so the first question is, how does Scite ensure that bogus scientific papers from paper mills are not part of the group of documents that it learns from or are not included in the results it presents to the user?
Yeah. That's a good question. I mean, so like the first answer, which isn't that much of an answer, is that those kinds of fabricated documents or papers from paper mills are sort of very few and far between. So luckily they don't normally come up that often. But that's not, like I said, really an answer. So the actual answer is that we use a bunch of different journal quality measures. So again, it is possible, suppose that Nature could publish a paper mill paper, but like that would be that hasn't happened. So we do keep a list of predatory journals and things like this that we blacklist. And so you won't see things from them. We also have like a journal index of our own that we use for contrasting and supporting citations. So most of the literature we pull from is going to be from very highly credible journals, things like this. So that's like more of the actual technical answer to the question. Yeah. But in
Awesome.
general, I
Well,
mean, if you snuck into Nature with a paper mill paper and no one kind of determined that, I mean, there's not much we can do about that. Yeah.
right. One follow-up question to that. What about open access journals?
Oh yeah, open access journals. I mean, so of course, closed access journals is like the main advantage of Scite, but the because other providers can't provide that information. But of course, we rely very heavily on open access journals because it is in many subfields becoming the most important and biggest source of content and uh, in fields like my own in machine learning, right? Like almost all of the content would be open access. So of course we use open access journals quite heavily. And they themselves, if the question is linked to the previous one, they themselves have quality measures and so on. So it's not like an open access journal doesn't have these things. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. Good question. The next one is more of a statement that maybe you can speak to. So it says, I have been using Scite. Some of the claims it makes when I get a summary are not true. I need to read the article to find out if it's correct.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would say for sure. Like, I don't think there's ever going to be an LLM tool where you don't actually have to read the article. That there's nothing that will like skip that step. And again, like I tried to emphasize, any tool of these natures, of the nature of using LLMs, even with RAG and a corrected RAG and fact verification and so on, the claims could be incorrect. And so you will have to check. There isn't a way around this. Now, of course, we do our best, and this is like a big priority for us to mitigate that as much as we possibly can through a variety of measures that I spoke to today, but that it's never going to be a thing where you don't have to read the actual article. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Can you please explain vector search?
Oh, vector search. It's yeah, I mean it just means that like you're going to take suppose it's abstracts, right? And now you want to try to solve the problem of uh, taking your user task or your user query and finding the abstracts that answer the question. I'm just using abstracts to make it simple. So what vector search does is it uses technology like large language models to put the user query into a vector. So a vector is just like a list of numbers into a vector that somehow encodes semantic similarity with the abstracts, which are also put into a vector. And so the idea behind vector similarity is that the once done this vectorization process with a model, like there's tons of these. Sentence transformers is like a pretty popular framework in which these models are used. Once you've done this, then the idea is the abstract vector that is most relevant should be close as possible in vector space, meaning if you look at the entries for the query and the entries for the abstract, that should be as close as possible in vector space. Uh, as and in order to like know that retrieving this abstract will answer this question, except that that isn't the case, and vector like search suffers from a number of problems where it is often just more effective to use keyword-based search, which is literally just matching keywords with some fancy things to make sure you don't aren't oversaturated with common keywords and things like this. Yeah.
Great. Thanks. So many good questions here. I'm curious if Scite has any concerns about some publishers backing out of their agreements as they develop their own AI assistants.
That is a really good question. We there so okay, so generally this doesn't come up, and there's a particular reason for that, which is that those publishers are limited to their own content, right? So they still have this incentive to participate in some sort of federated agent or federated thing that works across publishers. Now, there's a lot of things we give to publishers. It's not like they're giving this content to us for no reason. So the badge thing or the supporting and contrasting citations is one of the things we give to publishers and so on. And they find that very valuable. So in general, like if you're two competing publishers, and you both have agents, you're only gonna those agents are only okay. Imagine, you're two big publishers that have a lot of content. Even in that case, you have these huge content holes that only something that's federated across publishers that would be able to solve. And our publishers that we work with are very well aware of that. And so generally they don't see a conflict there. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for clarifying. How complex can the searches get? For example, Boolean operators and more.
Yeah, I mean, they can generally, yeah, they can have Boolean operators. You can add Boolean operators when you customize the search and so on. So they can get as complex as you need them. The search system we use is called Elasticsearch, which uses Lucene underneath. And so as long as it's like a Lucene formatted Boolean search, then it can be as complex as you want it to be, really. Generally, what the searches you see that are generated are typically like broken down such that they're between, you know, 4 or 5 clauses at the most, maybe even just 3 clauses, meaning like typically what you would see if it's something and something and something. Well, it's just 3 words in Lucene syntax. So, I mean, that's typically what you'll see generated in a search query plan, but you can add Boolean operators as much as you want. Yeah.
Okay, great. Following a previous question, when we find Scite has used an article that doesn't actually support the statement, is there something we can do to tell it to find a different or better source?
Yeah, yeah. So there's a few things you can do. Like in natural language, you could prompt the assistant to do that and then just regenerate and then then you'll get a different answer, or you can edit the answer previously with that kind of information. So that's another thing. You can change there's all kinds of settings where you can include different journals or other things again, which allows you to do that. And then finally, like you can use our feedback mechanisms that we have in Scite, like giving something a thumbs down or thumbs up or something in order to do that.
Awesome. Okay, that's an interesting question. Users at my university are concerned with the environmental impact of AI. Can you give some guidance on when it makes sense to use AI in terms of efficiencies versus doing your own searching, or just
Yeah.
context around the environmental impact of using Scite?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the large the large portion of environmental impact is training the models to begin with. So that's like the thing that requires the massive data centers. Once they're trained, of course, like it's easier to run them more efficiently. But generally these models, even serving them like OpenAI and Anthropic and so on, they require a lot of electricity to serve the models. In other words, generate text. And so um I mean, they are making their own efforts to be as environmentally friendly as possible, including building nuclear power plants and so on to mitigate that impact. But um, I think that if you are concerned with the electricity use of these models, there's sort of 2 routes you can go. One is like if you have some source of electricity that you are fine with, then you like suppose it's your university's like carbon neutral data center or something, then in that case you can have your own models that you serve using that source of electricity. But again, like for now, these models are quite heavy on electricity use, and we use these downstream providers. So you'd have to look to the initiatives that the model providers are engaging in, like nuclear power for clean energy.
Great, thank you so much. That was one of the upvoted questions. So it looks like many people are, yeah, concerned there. How does Scite deal with information summarized in, for example, drawings like chemical structures, reaction mechanisms, and such?
So right now, a site is not what's called a multimodal model. So we don't actually take any information that's represented visually into account. It is something that we've considered for a while because, of course, like many fields do, utilize figures and drawings and so on. So it is very important for that. When we're considering like a new version of answering documents that are uploaded in the near future, we'll probably have a think about how to potentially support that. So I'm glad you brought it up because we can kind of prioritize thinking about whether we support multimodal question answering in the future. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, after the webinar is over, you'll like all of you will be like asked to share some sort of feedback. So also if anything comes up here right now that is like, oh, this would be like a great product enhancement important to us, feel free to also add it there because we definitely would like to hear that. And I know our product team will be very happy if we forward those suggestions. Okay. Retractions are happening all the time. Springer Nature retracted 2,923 papers in 2024. Are there any measures that take this into account in updating the AI training?
Yes, actually. So we have the one of the most comprehensive retraction data sets. We have actually a paper on this that's on archive that explains our approach for retractions and more than retractions, other editorial concerns like errata and these kinds of things. So corrections, stuff like that, expressions of concern. So we think it's a very serious issue and it's a big factor that plays into our retrieval augmented generation. So of course we never retrieve retracted documents unless like the task is explicitly about analyzing documents that are retracted for some, science of science purposes, things like that. But yeah, we are very concerned about that, and that's why we had to build our own solution for like collecting an extremely robust source of editorial information. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. This is a clarification question to the previous one. Scite can look at tables in text format.
Tables in text format for sure, or LaTeX. Suppose you had like a queer a chemical structure that you had written out in LaTeX. Yeah. So as long as it's or in tech, it's as long as it's in some sort of textual format, that's fine. It's just the figures themselves. Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm just going through questions here 1 second. Okay, my question is, what do you think is the time saving of a researcher between ChatGPT, yes, hallucinating, but still writing up a paragraph, and Scite where there's still certain mistakes, but no help at drafting specifically? Yeah, do you have any thoughts around that?
Yeah, I mean the time savings is really that if you're asking questions that require being answered by scientific literature, uh, for the most part, ChatGPT won't really be able to retrieve comprehensively documents that do that. So you might have noticed if you use ChatGPT that like you do have some internet resources retrieved, but it's not like it's a comprehensive solution for that you would normally have if as a researcher you did literature search first or literature scan first. So you could think of it as like ChatGPT does the thing where you search the emulation it's doing is ChatGPT does the thing where you search on Google and you like click the first 10 links and you use that. Scite does the thing where you go to all of your not all, but you go to like the majority of the university literature databases that are relevant to your discipline. You consult a reference librarian, you formulate the queries, you do the searches, you filter for the information, you score the literature, and now you have like the 80 documents that are necessary to answer the question. So that's the time savings. Yeah.
Amazing, great. I'm sure many people had that question. Awesome. Okay, so a couple of questions about table mode. How do I get the table to display the full or more results together? Or differently asked, how to export and see it all?
I mean, I think that exporting and seeing it all is just if I'm understanding the question right, it's just exporting the table. I think
Yeah,
that satisfies I was showing this one, but they're the same, right? Like I think that's just what you're asking for, yeah.
Perfect. And you can keep your screen up. Here's another question. After creating a table, can I sort by different factors? For example, the number of citations?
No. So, I mean, yes and no. So not within tables themselves. So there isn't like a way to sort by, yeah, author, first name, or citation count, or some number of supporting citations, or contrasting citations. This could be like an interesting way of doing a sort, which we could potentially support. So I'll bring that to the product team, but that's sort of the no. The yes is like if you export it to a CSV, you can sort it by any of these fields. So if sorting is interesting to your use case, then that's what you would do. Yeah, for now.
Okay, perfect. Which is the best model to choose when you're looking for resources on a non-scientific topic? Do you have any recommendations?
On a non, um, I mean, it's hard Scite is for scientific topics. So it's hard to think of like what you would be using Scite for a non-scientific topic. I mean, maybe the thing is like I'm using science or very broadly to mean any research enterprise, including the humanities like history or social science or art history or literature and these kinds of things. So in general, like there is no difference between the models and there's no difference in everything I said in supporting uh, humanities research, right? It's all the exact same. So the model differences really come, I mean, to make it simple, the model differences between O mini and O3 mini, you'll see this reasoning effort thing comes up, and the reasoning effort is the like sample 1,000 different responses and select the best one instead of giving you the first response it generates. And that's really the only difference for model selection. Now, in terms of something that matters and is concrete, there are stylistic differences between Claude's models and GPT-4 models that you may or may not prefer. But that's just an optionality thing on stylistic things rather than something substantive. Yeah.
Awesome. I'm seeing quite a few questions here also regarding kind of like pricing. So I'll just drop a link here in the chat with a form. So if you fill that out, you can definitely get in touch with our team about that. You can also head over to the Scite website. But yeah, feel free to reach out if you're an existing customer, either of like already Scite or Article Galaxy, one of our other products in the product family. Feel free to reach out and we'll make sure to connect you to the right person. Okay, let's see. I think we can answer like another two questions before we're out of time here. You mentioned GPT-5 earlier. I've seen a few questions asking when it'll be implemented in Scite and people can select it.
Yeah, it's one of our next work items. So we prioritize like be following the developments of the large language providers because of course we depend on them. So that is definitely our next one of our next work items for sure. So you'll see it soon. Yep.
Awesome. Okay. Are sources where a view PDF link is available open access, or does Scite have an agreement with publishers to make the full content of articles available to their customers?
So that's a really good question because there's a lot of smartness that goes into this. Actually, I can probably yeah, these two are good. So okay, so here, so generally, not generally, if it says view PDF, you have access. The access you have depends on who you are and where you are. So um, and what license you have with Scite and other things potentially set up. Okay, so if you see if all you are is just like a random person on the internet, meaning you have no academic affiliation, and you're just accessing the internet from, downtown Toronto, which is where I am, then you're just going to see view PDF, and that will mean that it's open access. We don't have special agreements with publishers between Scite and the publisher. Now, if I went over to University of Toronto, which is just 5 minutes over there, and I click View PDF, then I'm going to get access to the document, even though it's closed access, because I'm on the IP address of University of Toronto, and University of Toronto subscribes to Scite. Okay, so that's one example. Another example might be like, your organization has a license with us, and your organization purchased Wiley PDFs. That'll all be there and figured out automatically. So it's just the entitlements are automatically figured out, so you don't have to worry about them. It is a bit of a complex answer, but again, just to summarize, we don't Scite itself doesn't have special agreements with publishers, but your university or organization might, and in which case you'll see it here. Yeah.
Great. And I think actually that was like the perfect last question and leads me yet again to that. Feel free to reach out to our team if you have that more complex question or interest in also in access of documents, of journals, of book chapters, whatever that is. Reach out to us and we'd be happy to jump on a call and look at your specific use case. Okay, well, we're out of time. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining session 3. Thank you so much, Dom, for this informative session. It was awesome. I learned a lot myself. And I'll make sure to follow up with everyone with the recording, with the slides, and then we'll also try to take some questions offline, and I'll share a few of those next week.
Thank you,
Okay,
everyone.
thank you, everyone. Have a great
Bye.
weekend.